So Donald Trump claimed in a recent interview with Chris Wallace on Fox News that companies moving their operations from the US to other countries, then selling their products back into the US was, quote, the dumb market, not the free market. Well, ironically, the only dumb thing in that exchange was Trump's understanding of free markets. The following clip was taken from December 11th's Fox News Sunday episode when Trump was challenged on his call for a 35% tax or tariff to be imposed on imports from American companies that outsource their operations.
You recently intervened with Carrier to save about 1,000 jobs from moving to Mexico, and you've said at one of your rallies, you're asking for a list of 10 companies that are thinking of outsourcing so you can call them as well. Should the President of the United States be calling companies? I mean, how would you have felt if Barack Obama gets on the phone and says, hey, Donald, here's how I want you to do business?
I would have been honored. So let me just tell you.
Honored?
I don't have to do it myself. I have great people. We have top smart people. But it's so easy to do. And we're going to have to impose a major tax on companies that leave, build their product, and think they're going to sell it right through our border like we're a bunch of jerks.
But what about the free market, sir?
That's not free market when they go out and they move and they sell back into our country.
But that's the free market. They made a decision. It makes...
No, that's the dumb market, okay? That's the dumb market.
So, of course, Chris Wallace is exactly right when he asks what happened to the free market. Under a free market system, companies are free to move wherever they like. And if you can move to a lower cost jurisdiction, whether that be in another state or another country, they will do so. That's the essence of a free market. Capital will move to where it's treated best.
I'm a big free trader, but it has to be fair.
So he's a big free trader, but it has to be fair. Well, free markets are fair in the sense that they will reward the lowest cost producer. A free market allocates capital, and if it's cheaper to produce goods in Mexico than the US, then that's what the free market will dictate. Trump's conception of fairness seems to be trade that he approves of. Sounds similar to the SJW stance on opinions. Maybe Trump should just make US manufacturing one big safe space. Now, a better way to formulate Trump's argument is that he's for trade deals that are in the economic interests of America. But what does that even mean? Because a trade deal or trade policy that keeps jobs in America may be good for workers in the short term, but it's not good for consumers that have to pay more for goods that cost more to manufacture locally. And it ultimately makes the economy less competitive because consumers end up subsidizing uncompetitive industry. So whilst keeping manufacturing jobs in the US might be a positive populist message, it's not necessarily good for the economy. Now, when it comes to trade deals he doesn't like, one of Trump's pet peeves is NAFTA.
NAFTA is the worst trade deal maybe ever signed anywhere, but certainly ever signed in this country. And now you want to approve Trans-Pacific Partnership. You were totally in favor of it. Then you heard what I was saying, how bad it is, and you said, I can't win that debate. But you know that if you did win, you would approve that, and that will be almost as bad as NAFTA. Nothing will ever top NAFTA.
So was NAFTA the worst trade deal in history? Well, NAFTA was signed into law by President Clinton on December 8, 1993, and took effect on January 1st, 1994. At that time, the US unemployment rate was 6.6%, and by the end of the decade, it was a little over 4%. But what about the loss of manufacturing jobs? Well, in raw numbers, manufacturing jobs peaked in 1979 and have been in decline ever since. But by January 2001, there were slightly more people employed in manufacturing than when NAFTA was implemented 7 years earlier. It was only in the wake of the 2001 recession that manufacturing jobs took a dive, and again during the Great Recession of 2008-2009. And it's not clear from the data that NAFTA was the cause. Manufacturing took a dive during the early 1980s recessions and in all recessions since the post-war period. But the loss of manufacturing jobs is a little misleading because the total number of jobs in the US economy continued to grow. So to fully understand the decline in manufacturing, let's look at the percentage of total jobs that were represented by the manufacturing sector. And not surprisingly, manufacturing peaked at the height of the war effort in late 1943 at just shy of 39% of all US jobs. By the end of the war, manufacturing represented 32% of all jobs in the US and remained over 30% of all jobs until the late 1950s. Then it started on a long, slow decline, representing just 8.5% of all jobs today. So manufacturing's importance to the US job market has been declining for almost 60 years, and NAFTA does not appear to have had a major effect on that trend one way or the other. At the same time, the service sector kept adding jobs and today accounts for more than 70% of US jobs. Now, of course, these are nationwide stats. No doubt some areas are hurt more than others. Detroit has obviously been decimated by the loss of manufacturing jobs. But the real problem is not that manufacturing jobs are lost, but what are they replaced with? If decent paying manufacturing jobs are replaced with low paying jobs in retail, then that's a problem. But we also know that plenty of jobs have been created in the high paying tech industry. But for individuals who want to avoid having their jobs offshored, it comes down to this.
You equip yourself with skills that people are willing to pay for.
Just because you've been employed in a decent paying manufacturing job for 10 years doesn't mean you're entitled to the same job for another 10 years. Industries come and go all the time, and jobs with them. As an individual, you have a responsibility to equip yourself with the skills that people are willing to pay for. No one owes you a job. If manufacturing dries up in your town or state and politicians make it burdensome for industry via high taxation, then move states. What do you think explains the exodus of population from Detroit? Why is Texas one of the fastest growing states in the US? If you don't want to move or learn new skills and then bitch about not having a job, then that's on you. In a free market, companies can up and move. You have to make sure you can do the same by retraining, learning new skills, and have a willingness to relocate. And what about the idea of slapping a 35% tax on companies that decide to offshore and sell back into the US? Well, for one thing, it doesn't stop manufacturing relocating to lower cost states in the US. So it won't stop Rust Belt states from losing jobs if they can relocate to lower tax jurisdictions like Texas or Nevada. Nor would it stop a company closing down a factory and going out of business because another firm that never had a US business started operations up in Mexico. And even if you can retain local manufacturing jobs, some are probably going to be lost to automation anyway. Also, a lot of offshoring doesn't involve manufacturing. IT services was the first industrial sector to move a significant number of jobs offshore starting in the early 2000s. IT services firms are ripe for offshoring since labour costs account for approximately 70% of the net cost for these companies. So Trump's 35% tax imposition on manufacturers that offshore is unlikely to stop the decline of manufacturing in the US, let alone the Rust Belt, not to mention the detrimental effects of high tariffs. Ceteris paribus, higher tariffs lead to lower trade, and lower trade leads to lower growth economies. The Smoot-Hawley tariff imposed at the onset of the Great Depression exacerbated unemployment and retarded growth in the economy, rather than help. But perhaps that's a topic for another video.
We're being stripped of our jobs. Our good jobs are really going down, and we've got to stop it. And the only way you're going to stop it, the nice way, is we're reducing taxes very substantially for companies, so they're not going to have to leave because of taxes. We'll be reducing regulations. Now, those are the nice ways of doing it, and everyone loves it, and everyone's happy, businesses.
Now, this kind of talk is encouraging. No doubt the US has suffered from a lack of productive investment in recent decades, and making the US a more attractive place to invest is a great idea. But threatening manufacturing companies at offshore is a form of economic authoritarianism and won't do anything to help the US economy in the long run.